Thanks for coming back. This is a short lesson, but it's a very personal one because what we must contemplate now, as I stand on the cusp of moving into that corner, what we need to think about now is what all of this means for you, because we're not just learning about theory as theory. We're learning about theory in terms of what it represents relative to your introduction to the business place and you're taking up a role there. Um, how will that journey pan out for you? Will it be a favorable one? Will it be an unfavorable one? So, if we are to make you as effective as possible, then I simply want you to think about yourself as a person and not just managers as people. Okay, so that's where we're going with this. The What this kind of means for you is that step one, do you want to be a boss of other people? Do you have the necessary values? Do you demonstrate the necessary orientation and disposition? Do you have the personality for it, is what we're saying. And do you have the skills and abilities? Because if you haven't got the skill sets, then you're not going to be able to do it. If you don't have the stamina and the perseverance, then you're not going to be able to be a boss. It's also not necessarily the case that being a boss is your terminal value. It might not be what turns you on. You might be quite happy to be a follower. You might be quite happy to be an expert at your job, but you don't want your job to be telling other people what to do. You'd like to make things, but not make people do things. And and hopefully you have an idea of what your instrumental values are. What is that suitcase of shirts that you're going to take on your journey towards your instrumental value destination? The It's probably impossible at this point in time to say you'd like to work in mining or architecture or retail management, um, or, or or technology in some or other way, or maybe for a university. It really is, because I think you're too young. But I'd like to introduce this guy because he's not one of our graduates, but he was born here, and his business is operating successfully in Johannesburg. He comes from a farming background because it's what he it's what he grew up with. And a number of you, um, if not from the same kind of background, will have had friends, um, who who were raised on this diet, if you like, of understanding that there is a connection that we have to the earth. The He studied at Wits, and 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 spent a lot of time on his grandfather's farm. This is something I clipped from their webpage, nasonfoods.com. He talks about nurturing a better tomorrow. We're not just planting seeds, we're nurturing a better tomorrow. I just have to turn that around and say, what is your tomorrow? What is it that you seek for yourself? Because that's quite vital. Here is one of our graduates, by the way. This is Kareshni Naika. She graduated in 2016 on the Maritzburg campus, having studied a BSc in agriculture. And she she took on an internship and and went to Tasmania, which is close to Australia. And she completed her final year of her training there. So she, when interviewed, said, I want to run my own dairy farm. Now, I've not been able to follow her up to see if she is running her own dairy farm or not, but in terms of this ambition of running her own dairy farm, that prompts me to say, what? her own dairy farm, but will she manage to manage her own dairy farm? Because running a dairy farm is not an easy business. Running a dairy farm means that you are going to have to put a lot of things together. And if you don't put them together in a pattern in order to get products to the consumer, then you're going to come unstuck. So when I say will she manage, I mean exactly that. Will she manage? Does she have the requisite competence? Now, she performed very well in her internship, so and people were very happy with her. But is that enough? Because she also needs money or capital, and she's going to have to negotiate access to credit. And my concern is that no one's going to give you an account if you don't have a track record or if you're very young, because you just represent risk. Um, that's an obstacle to future success. Equipment suppliers might not provide you with equipment for much the same reason. And that's something that she's going to have to bear in mind. And it's not just equipment that you're buying, you also have to have feed for those head of cattle. You're going to have a vet's bill, and that vet is not going to work for you if you don't pay them. And you'll need customers, and to reach customers, you'll need some means of distribution. You'll have to think about the competition that there is, because you're not the only person who wants to be a dairy farmer, and your staff. Will your staff work as you need staff to work? And will you be able to undertake the necessary administration to keep that business running, the business administration, doing the books, in other words, and filling in the returns and managing the compliance returns? Because if you can't do that, then, well, then you can't really be in business for yourself. So I'd like you to think about this. Could you start a business if you were in her shoes? Would you be able to do those things? In other words, I'm asking whether you can be a manager, and 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 that means you'll have to conceive of a business and know where it should be located, and be able to explain why that's a good idea. You would need to have practiced managing, because I can't anticipate that you are necessarily gifted at management, because this is probably the first time you've studied it. And have you got the necessary grit, the necessary gusto, enthusiasm, energy to keep the whole exercise running? Because if not, then we're saying there's a bit of a problem. Um, and we don't want problems for you. We want success for you. This business of success, though, is not as easy as it may sound when it's just written on paper and expressed by me. It's not as straightforward as that, because your success as a manager is something which is dependent not just upon yourself, but also upon the context in which you are managing and the people that you're managing. Sometimes people just don't make good followers, and that's what managers lead. They lead followers, and if you don't have followers, they're not going to be led. So the rough trade is, as I've written at the bottom of the screen, the only person anyone's going to blame is the manager. They're not going to blame the employee for not following. They're going to blame the manager for not obtaining the followership of the subordinate. The in large business, we do invest money in training people, but those soft skills that we have to incorporate um, are not durable, because if people don't internalize them, they don't necessarily get to to practice them continually. and then we have to retrain them and retrain them and retrain them. What we realize is that bad managers are guilty of some really bad behaviors, and I'm going to allow you to pore over those results yourself. The great guys are guilty of these good behaviors, and you can pause the video and have a look at these things yourself, because the investigation is very enlightening. So the point is simply that good managers tend to have good followers, and there is effective engagement and effective output, efficiency, effectiveness. What I've shown you here is that weak managers and good managers, when you ask employees whether they get a kick out of coming to work or not, where they work for bad managers, um, they're not really happy to come to work. In other words, the workplace is something which is complexioned by the manager. The manager creates the culture. I'd like you to read the supplement I made available to you, and I think you'll derive an enormous amount of value from that. So please don't see it simply as unnecessary extra work. I really do think that you'll derive value from reading Becoming the Boss. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next session.